We move to questions to the Executive Office, and I call Mr. Stuart Dixon. Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Commission on Flags, Identity, Culture and Tradition, otherwise referred to as FICT, concluded its work and provided its final report to Ministers on 17th of July 2020. A series of next steps, including a FICT implementation plan, were approved by the Executive on the 25th of March 2021. On the 1st of April 2021, initial engagement of departments was approved by Ministers. On the 22nd of April 2024, officials met with junior ministers to discuss matters in relation to the report and the possible way forward. Officials are now preparing a submission on the back of that engagement, which is expected to set out a number of options for consideration regarding the next steps in relation to the report and its recommendations.
Mr. Dixon.
Minister for her answer. Deputy First Minister, given that the Commission doesn't support the status quo with flags and emblems on public property, what action, given that you've now had over 4 years since the initiation of that report to take action, what action is your department actually going to take to deal with the issue of flags on public property?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. There will be a number of recommendations that there was consensus on in relation to the Commission, and we hope to be able to move forward with consensus with some of those, but we await the submission and advice from officials. But I think inevitably there will be other aspects of the report where there is no consensus, but we will engage in terms of all of the recommendations and assess how we can move forward. But the key thing is waiting for that submission and recommendation and advice from officials at this stage.
Carl Killian.
The Deputy First Minister for a response. So, just in short, you are waiting on the submission coming regarding the FICT implementation plan. When do you anticipate that coming forward, Deputy First Minister? Will it be before the summer recess or will it be after?
Minister.
Yes, I'm always acutely aware when I am responding to questions, and that this area deals with a number of tricky and contentious issues of which there's been no consensus since the Good Friday Belfast Agreement, nor was there consensus before. But we are aware that the officials' advice is at a very advanced stage, and we are anticipating getting that in the very next short while, and we will work through that and have those discussions in absolutely good faith. So we do anticipate getting that prior to the summer recess.
Brian Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to ask the Deputy First Minister, how important is it to be respectful of our various cultures and identities in Northern Ireland, particularly as we move into the main parading season?
Minister.
Thank the member for his question. And of course, the right of freedom of expression is a fundamental human right, and one that must be respected and respected by all of us. It is something that is precious in our society in terms of all of our identities and the right to be able to explore those, to learn about them and to express those, including in the public space. So I absolutely believe it is essential. The Executive Office is an office which has responsibility in relation to a number of those issues around those fundamental human rights, and I hope that we can all move to a space where we show that respect to each other, including for our parading and other traditions.
Colin McGrath.
Mr. Speaker, what does the Deputy First Minister have to say to my constituents that have unwanted flags flying outside their homes for the whole of the summer process? And also, would you commit including a legal framework to remove these within the programme for government, whether we get it this summer or not? Minister.
I thank the member for his question. He will be aware of a debate on this issue just in the last number of weeks, that there is no consensus in relation to that recommendation from the FICT Commission, but of course the FICT Commission themselves did not have consensus around that recommendation either.
Matthew Till. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are working at pace with executive colleagues to develop and agree a programme for government. We hope to publish a draft for consultation in the coming weeks, which will be brought to the Assembly for scrutiny. It will reflect the need to reform and transform our public services and will set out our collective priorities for this mandate. We are keen to bring forward a draft programme for government as soon as possible.
Matthew Till.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We could spend all day talking about your definition of pace, Deputy First Minister. It might not be quite the same kind of pace that we saw at the North West 200 this weekend, by all appearances. But can I ask, since the debate we've just been having on the Opposition Day motion is about publishing either a programme for government by the summer or summary of actions and outcomes, will you commit now that we will have one of those two documents by the time of summer recess, either the full programme for government or a summary of outcomes?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. As indicated, our intention is to publish a draft programme for government as soon as possible, and certainly before the summer recess.
Cathy Mason.
And I welcome the Deputy First Minister's confirmation that work is ongoing at pace with executive colleagues to develop and agree a programme for government. Can the Deputy First Minister confirm that the provision of affordable childcare still remains a core executive commitment?
Minister.
Absolutely. As outlined just in my remarks in the previous debate, childcare, undoubtedly affordable childcare, is a priority not just for the First Minister and myself, and we've said that many times, but I believe indeed for the entire of the executive. There are challenges in terms of the budget situation that we are currently in, but it is absolutely right that that development of an affordable childcare strategy started immediately, and it did. It was discussed at the first executive meeting. The task and finish group led by the Department of Education was established within those first number of weeks. That is due to publish, respond, make their recommendations to the Education Minister, who will be bringing those forward very, very shortly in terms of immediate actions. But of course the longer term strategy will require co-production, co-design. Has to be the right strategy with the right interventions, but we want to do that as quickly as we can.
Deborah Erskine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Deputy First Minister for answers so far. Work is happening, and work is happening in the Executive on a number of matters. And even in the absence of a programme for government, a number of important decisions have been taken by the Executive. Can the Deputy First Minister outline what some of those are?
Minister.
I thank the member for her question, and indeed I will echo what I said in the previous debate. You know, almost £700 million worth of funding out in terms of public sector pay settlements going into the pockets of hard-working public sector workers that deserved that pay rise before, and I'm glad that they will now be getting, and some of which will have received some of that in this month's pay as well. We have made decisions in terms of ring fencing, £1.9 million for Loughney and immediate interventions. We've secured £8 million of additional funding in relation to potholes. We have secured inclusion of Northern Ireland in the Post Office Horizon payment scheme, and many, many other issues, including securing executive agreement to a budget despite the very difficult circumstances we find ourselves in. This has been an executive about delivery thus far. We will continue to do so while properly taking the right time to develop and to ensure it's the right intervention, but we will be about delivery, and I will ensure that that is the case.
Kate Nicholl.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister. I welcome your commitment to childcare within the programme for government. Can the First Minister confirm that preschool is not childcare, and any schemes that are developed will take learnings from the failed 3 hours model in the UK?
Minister.
I thank the member for her question. Affordable childcare is an area that I've been working on for many, many years. It has been a frustrating journey, but there's no doubt that preschool, nursery care and other interventions can support families in relation to the affordability of their childcare. We need a comprehensive affordable childcare strategy, and it's important that there are many different elements of that fit in, and that includes around child education and child development. I think all of these elements can be helpful, but of course we do need that comprehensive childcare strategy, and the First Minister and I are determined to ensure that this is an executive that delivers that.
Nick Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 3.
Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Building on the success of urban villages, our officials have had regular engagement with Thrive as we recognise its positive impact on good relations and how it could be used as a model when it comes to taking a more collaborative approach to improve outcomes. Representatives from Thrive have spoken to a number of cross-departmental groups to highlight their experience to help inform our approach to place-based working. TEO has joined other departments in contributing funding to Thrive and becoming a member of its programme board. Good Relations officials are currently reviewing that return on investment, which does look positive, I have to say, with a view to considering further funding in 2024-25 financial year.
Mr.
thank the Deputy First Minister for her answer. And having visited the Thrive project recently, I would highlight it as an exemplar of good practice and place-based collaboration. With that in mind, can the Deputy First Minister detail how your office will learn from the Thrive project to ensure that there is genuine collaboration between executive departments in this mandate, including the pooling of resources to deliver on key projects?
Mr.
The member for his question. I was a very early convert and enthusiast for place-based interventions, particularly through the Urban Village Initiative. I think there's been really good and positive work done through urban villages and including in projects like Thrive. We absolutely must learn the lessons from this, that joined up and collaborative approach, working hand in hand, and the incredible Monkstown Boxing Club that I had the privilege of visiting a few years ago as well. But like great community organisations rolling out fantastic projects, we must learn from this and build on it as a way forward.
Patrick Lorgate.
I can't fully appreciate the Minister's already touched on this, but can you give some more detail around any consideration that's been given to the future delivery of the Urban Villages project?
Minister.
Thank the member for his question. And indeed, the Executive Office budget has been incredibly difficult. We had requested over £7 million of additional revenue, particularly to support our good relations and our ending violence against women and girls strategies. Unfortunately, we were only able to secure £1 million of additional funds, and when you take into account inflationary increase and other pressures, it doesn't leave a significant amount of headroom. But of course, our good relations strategy and our interventions are vitally important, and urban villages has been one where I think we've had some very, very good learning. We are actively considering the way forward, particularly around this place-based intervention model, and we're hoping to come forward with some proposals, and we'll consult with the committee on those to forge the new programme and the way forward.
Mr. Speaker. First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our officials in Brussels engage with the EU on issues relating to the provisions of the Windsor Framework through its governance structures. The movement of veterinary medicines from Great Britain to Northern Ireland is now subject to the direction and control of the Secretary of State, as provided for in Regulation 3 of the Windsor Framework Implementation Regulations of 2024. Northern Ireland officials attend fora, including the Specialised Committee on the Implementation of the Windsor Framework and Joint Consultative Working Group and structured groups as part of the UK delegation. Under the respective rules of procedure, these meetings are confidential, but where officials have had informal discussions with the EU officials, this has also been to provide factual and technical background information in relation to this issue.
Tom Elliott.
Mr. Speaker, and thank the Deputy First Minister. I do appreciate that the matters are confidential or a lot of them, but just wondering, there was a resolution found to the human medicines issue at an early stage, and I'm wondering if there was any opportunity at that stage that has been missed to do the same for veterinary medicines.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think undoubtedly that the European Union has taken a particular stance in relation to veterinary medicines. I can assure the member that at every opportunity in terms of the UK groups that I have participated in terms of intergovernmental, interministerial groups, I have raised this issue as an absolute priority. I know that the farming community, I know that vets are very concerned about this. This has to be resolved, and I don't think any member in this House, no matter what party you're from, should underestimate the significance of this issue not being resolved. This is an absolutely urgent issue, and I hope that everybody will raise this at every opportunity that they have. We need a resolution, and we need it now.
Philip McGuigan.
Can I ask the Deputy First Minister if she agrees with me that the International Bureau provide a key function representing the priorities of the Executive overseas?
Minister.
Absolutely, not only to spread better understanding about this place of Northern Ireland, but I think it's important because in order to grow our economy, which is a joint objective, not just of the First Minister and I in terms of our prosperity agenda, and trying to ensure that the economy of Northern Ireland grows and works for everyone throughout Northern Ireland. But we know that an essential element of that is that foreign direct investment and support, and we can only do that by utilising those bureaux and ensuring that Northern Ireland's voice is heard on that global stage, and that all of the fantastic things that Northern Ireland has to offer is very clearly put out there to the international community, that Northern Ireland is open for business, and we're here to discuss that with you.
William Irwin.
Thank you, Minister, for responses. Given the serious issue of the veterinary medicines, has the Executive discussed this issue, and has the DAERA Minister made any efforts to resolve this, as far as she's aware?
the member for his question. Yes, of course, we've discussed this with ministerial colleagues in relation to the executive. As indicated, at every opportunity I emphasise the seriousness of this issue. The member will know from his farming background and his role in terms of the agricultural policy brief how important this issue is to the entire of the farming community, but also to vets, not just in terms of agriculture, but in terms of domestic pets as well, and he will be fully aware of how urgent this issue is in terms of trying to get a resolution. And we would call on the United Kingdom Government as well to work closely with us in urging the European Union to find the resolution, and if they do not, to operate the mechanisms under the command paper to take unilateral action, which they have committed to do, to ensure that Northern Ireland is not left behind when the transition period ends as set out in the Windsor Framework.
Jim Allister.
Their party chose to go back into government without resolution of the veterinary medicines issue on the premise of some promise in the Safeguarding the Union document. But today in the High Court we've had an even greater implosion of a promise in that document, a promise that the Irish Sea border only applied to trade, when today the Rwanda bill has been struck down because of the supremacy of EU law. Does she agree with Lord Dodds, who says that this confirms the detrimental anti-union constitutional ramifications of the Windsor Framework? And if so, why is she still supporting the Windsor Framework?
Minister.
The member will be aware, and speaking in a personal capacity, that the Safeguarding the Union addressed many issues and focused in relation to trade primarily. However, he will also be aware, and it is a matter on the record, that, speaking personally, my colleagues raised the issue time and time again, both in the House of Lords and the House of Commons, of concerns in terms of the scope of Article 2 of Windsor Framework and the no diminution of rights issue. The UK Government and the UK Government lawyers took a different view, and they maintained that robustly. I think the High Court has been very clear today. The UK Government, in my view, now this matter may well go to the Supreme Court, but the UK Government must, in my view, take cognizance of what the High Court has said and move to urgently address these issues, because the UK Parliament has sovereignty over these issues. They've asserted that sovereignty over these issues, so they should use that sovereignty to address these issues emerging from the no diminution of rights, a wider scope and implications as set out in the judgment today.
Ciara Ferguson.
5.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Communities in Transitions is designed to build safer, empowered communities free from criminality and coercive control of paramilitarism. To date, 82 projects worth over 19 million have been delivered across the 8 designated areas. 52 of these projects have been completed, with the remaining 30 contracts continuing into this year. CIT has improved community resilience through targeted interventions to address issues such as child and financial exploitation, the impact of drugs, including addiction and poor mental health, community safety and policing, and the negative impact of paramilitarism on the physical landscape. Paramilitarism remains a residual problem in some parts of our society here. Focusing on a policing and criminal justice system solution is important, but we also know that it's not enough and that we need a wider holistic approach that includes working with communities.
Ferguson.
First Minister for her answers thus far. Does the Deputy First Minister agree that the Community Transition Programme has made a difference to tackling paramilitarism and that this work should be expanded going forward?
Minister.
I thank the member for her question. Yes, the feedback and the evaluation has been very, very positive, particularly around that resilience within communities. We know that that is incredibly important, that communities have that resilience. And I would highlight that, during the COVID crisis, we really saw that resilience within our incredible third sector and community sector come to the fore, where they were able to operate very quickly to help and support so many living within those communities. So we have a third sector here that we should be very proud of, and I'm glad that this project has contributed in such a positive way to increasing that resilience even further.
Just McNulty.
Thank the Minister for answers thus far. Can I ask the Deputy First Minister, in relation to tackling paramilitarism, how can you reconcile the reality that half of the Executive Office, including her party, continues to cheerlead paramilitarism right up to the current day?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. I've always been very, very clear that every person across this House, every member in that executive should be very clear that paramilitarism is wrong. It was always wrong. There was always an alternative. I've said that very clearly here. And of course, the signing up to policing and justice and the rule of law was an important change that was brought about by St Andrews. But of course, we all must go further and ensure that every single day that we do not glorify terrorism, but indeed call it out and ensure that we are taking the rightful path of law, justice and order.
Claire Sugden.
Deputy First Minister, how successful have we really been in tackling paramilitarism when we're hearing nearly weekly of incidents in Bushmills last week and other incidents of criminality right across Northern Ireland? You know, how successful can we be in the absence really of a programme for government that hasn't been fully realised since 2016?
Minister.
I thank the member for her questions. Of course, the departments and the executive operate in a number of different ways, as the member is aware. It's not just about the programme for government commitments, it's also about the strategies within those departments that the executive and indeed this House endorses, and those strategies very often go well beyond the lifetime of an executive or a particular programme for government. I think that is deeply important. I think we have come a very, very long way in terms of tackling paramilitarism, but we also need to acknowledge the complexity of the issue, that very often what we call paramilitarism here is simply criminality, and I know the member will be aware of that from your work generally, but specifically in relation to the justice brief. Where there is that criminality, it has to have a robust criminal justice approach. Let's make absolutely no doubt about it. We will support communities to have that resilience, but criminality is wrong. It was always wrong. It needs to be called out, and it needs that robust approach.
Mark Durgan.
Speaker, with £19 million having been awarded through Communities in Transition, it's important that the public is guaranteed value for money. How exactly are projects measured for effectiveness, and can the Deputy First Minister point to an example of best practice?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. And of course, like in any department now, in terms of any of these projects, there is that obligation, rightly so, of an evaluation process, and that will measure the outcomes. So we'll look at the outcome set at the beginning of the project, and we'll look at the indicators, it will look at what was baselined in terms of what it was that the project was designed to improve upon. And then, of course, we then curve back around, sometimes periodically throughout the project, sometimes at the end of that project, to assess how effective it has been. In my view, we haven't always been great at taking those most effective programmes as so evaluated and ensuring those are mainstreamed and moved forward. We need to get better at that. But I will highlight, I attended just here in the Great Hall a great event for one of the CIT projects in relation to restorative justice, and we heard from members of the police, we heard from teachers, we heard from community people using those restorative justice practices funded and supported through this programme, and how that de-escalates situations in the classroom, in schools, within the community, and how that avoids in that situation getting to the point where it is much more serious, including in consequence for those involved in it and those pupils. So really, really fantastic project, but of course I always emphasise we could not do this without our fantastic community partners, those who are on the front line rolling these out and really delivering.
Donnelly.
I'd like to ask the Minister if there's any recognition, given the inability of authorities to deal adequately with the display of symbols promoting prescribed organisations in breach of the Terrorism Act, that there remains a fundamental failure in removing the scourge of paramilitary gangs from too many of our communities.
Minister.
Thank the member for his question. Paramilitarism has absolutely no role in the Northern Ireland of today. It has absolutely no role in our past, and it has no role for our future. As indicated, paramilitarism and it's quite frankly the criminality involved in current activities needs a robust criminal justice response.
Michelle McIlveen. Minister.
Thank the member for her. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, Junior Minister Cameron will answer this question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The draft strategic framework was developed following a successful co-design process involving over 50 stakeholders with representatives from departments, statutory agencies, a range of sectors, including the voluntary and community sector, and those with lived experience. A public consultation took place last summer, during which officials held a series of public sessions and targeted engagements seeking inputs from groups facing additional barriers, including LGBTQ+ community, migrant women, deaf and disabled and rural women. To ensure the voices of young people are reflected, youth panels were also held in collaboration with the Education Authority. In February, the First Minister and Deputy First Minister met with the co-design group, and Junior Minister Riley and I visited a number of women's centres and organisations to engage directly with stakeholders. We will continue to engage with our co-design partners and stakeholders to ensure their lived experience and expertise is reflected in the design and delivery of the framework.
Ms McAveen.
Mr Speaker, and I thank the Junior Minister for her response thus far. As the Junior Minister is aware, tackling violence against women and girls will involve societal change from very early on. Can the Junior Minister give some more detail just in relation to how young people have been involved in the development of the framework?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank my colleague and the member for this additional question. And the involvement of young people, this has been raised with us during the engagements with stakeholders, and violence against women and girls in all its forms affects each and every one of us. And in order to tackle this challenge, there is an urgent need to focus on our children and young people. A series of youth panels were established in partnership with the Education Authority, whose input informed the development of the draft strategy. In September, our officials facilitated a youth engagement event at Parliament Buildings with young people from the Eliminating Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, or EVOG. Youth panels engaging in a range of creative and innovative activities. The input of young people is key to successful implementation of the framework.
Emma Sheeran.
Earlier, and I thank the Junior Minister for her answers thus far. Junior Minister, can you advise how the recently developed framework on ending violence against women and girls will help to deal with the immediate pressures and challenges?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. The work is already underway to establish the foundations necessary for the whole of government and for the whole of society approach needed to tackle this problem. And partnership working is key, and we're working together on prevention across education and in the workplace when socialising and with our children and young people. This includes developing campaigns to influence and change attitudes and behaviours for the whole of society, supporting partners to develop training packages, to equip people to do the right thing, and to ensure that there is good policies and tools to protect women and girls wherever they are. Violence against women and girls is everyone's problem, and solving it will need collective action by everyone in our society.
Paula Bradshaw.
Junior Minister. Junior Minister, going back to the issue of engagement, can you outline whether sex workers and trans women, both very vulnerable and marginalised sections of society, whether they were engaged with? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. I don't have that information available, so we'll come back to the member in writing.
Cara Hunt.
Mr Speaker, I'd like to thank the Junior Minister for her answers so far. We are the only part of the UK where women's aids groupings do not receive guaranteed state funding. Do you believe this is acceptable given the incredible work that they do to support vulnerable women and girls in our society?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank the member for her question, and it's a very important question. In terms of the funding for the likes of Women's Aid, NI, Nexus and other organisations, they obviously did lose that funding. We know we're operating in a very difficult budgetary situation, and we're aware that the impact is being felt across not just government departments but within our communities and across the community and voluntary sector. Core grant funding obviously remains the responsibility for the Department of Health, but we'll continue to engage with the Minister of Health on this issue in the context of the recently agreed budget position.
I call Declan McAleer. Minister.
Mr Speaker, we recognise the immense economic, historical and reconciliation potential of the site and look forward to working with recently appointed board to maximise the potential. We are hoping to meet with the board over the next number of weeks. You will be aware that the Royal Ulster Agricultural Society continue to develop this area, and of course it's the fantastic Balmoral show this week, so I hope that everybody is intending to come down and show the Balmoral show some support, not just an absolute jewel right on the heart of my constituency, Lagan Valley, but of course it's a fantastic showcase for the entire of Northern Ireland.
Briefly, Mr McAleer.
And I agree with the Deputy First Minister and her reference to fantastic Balmoral show, and I was there this morning, just at Nairn there this morning, and they're getting well prepared for it. Does the Minister agree that we now need to see a plan to maximise the economic, historical and reconciliation benefit of this site? Very good.
Briefly, Minister.
For his question. Look, absolutely, I want to see the potential unlocked for that site. We've always been very clear that whatever the way forward, it has to be done in a way which is absolutely sensitive to the victims and survivors and those who are most impacted in relation to the issues. But there is huge economic potential as well, and as long as it's done in that context, we will be having those discussions to try to see if we can find an agreed way forward, and I hope that we can.
We now move to topical questions. I call Matthew Till.
Speaker, Deputy First Minister, the theme of our opposition day today is delivery. So can I ask, when will we see an Irish Language Commissioner appointed?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. The First Minister and I have received the submission in relation to the appointments process, and we hope to make an announcement on that very shortly.
Mr. O'Toole.
I welcome the Deputy First Minister's clarity. She says very shortly she will appreciate that I asked a question of their office in February and received an answer a couple of weeks ago that we would be kept informed of the process. But can I ask that this is expedited and that there is clarity before summer recess on how the provisions of the Identity and Language Act 2022 are going to be delivered? This was the reason for, in my view, a spurious and unacceptable fight for many years. It would be helpful to have that clarity before the summer.
Minister.
Thank the member for his question. He will be aware that it's not just one commissioner, there are indeed two commissioners and a body. So these will move forward together, the British Commissioner, the Irish Language Commissioner and the Office for Identity, and we hope to and we intend to go out for the appointments process for all three, those two commissioner posts and the new body. Yes, it is our intention to make that announcement very shortly.
Tennyson.
Ask the Deputy First Minister for an update on the Troubles Permanent Disablement Payment Scheme, please.
Minister.
Member for his question. I'm pleased to say that the disablement scheme has now given out over £40 million worth of settlements and awards in terms of those who have applied to the board. I'm also aware, though, that there is still a significant level of frustration with the length of time that it is taken. As indicated to this House previously, the process was that people would put in their application, and indeed then the reaching out for further information would take place after that application has gone in. That, of course, has added to the time taken because of the complexity in relation to a number of these cases, and also that a number of these cases took place, the incidents involved in them took place some considerable time ago. So I understand the frustration entirely, but I think it is positive that we have now got over £40 million out to those who need it most.
Mr. Tennant.
Thank the Minister for that answer. The Deputy First Minister will be aware of calls from victim support organisations for an extension to the deadline for applications for backdated payments. Can I ask, does the Minister support that call, and what representations has she made to the UK Government to that effect?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. Yes, I absolutely support that call, and we've made those representations to the UK Government. We had a draft letter to go. I will just check and confirm with him that that letter has issued, but certainly it is something that the First Minister and I are in agreement with, and we are intending to write formally, but we have raised this through other channels as well, directly to the Secretary of State and to the UK Government.
Sherry Kelly.
Well, does the Deputy First Minister agree with me that it's Tory austerity and sustained underinvestment over the last decade or more, which has limited the ability of this executive to deliver quality public services?
Minister.
I think that there will always be a challenge to fund our public services adequately. The current budget settlement has been very, very challenging over the course of the last couple of years. I think the assessment from the Finance Department is that we fell below what is deemed as assessed need. That assessed need is 124% of what the per head spend is in England. I think many here would dispute that it's 124, and we would argue that it is more. Now, some of those costs are logical costs. There's economies of scale, of course, but there's also issues of increased spend in relation to policing. Because of the ongoing security situation. We've got infrastructure such as our water and sewage, which costs a lot of money because it needs that investment to make it more efficient. But we've always made the point that in order to transform our public services, that also requires the investment of funds to ensure that those efficiencies can come through. We can't do that within the current fiscal envelope that we have been given, and that is why we've made those representations, not just holding out a begging bowl. That is not what we're about, but asking the UK Government to help support us do the necessary transformation to put Northern Ireland's finances on a sustainable footing.
Mr. Kelly.
I thank the Minister for her answer up to now. As a member of the Policing Board, may I just add in about the funding to the Justice Department and the numbers of police officers which we need. But further on to what she has said, I presume the Minister will agree with me that a new funding model, as described by yourself, based on what is essential and what is needed to deliver the public services that our people deserve and need.
Minister.
I thank the member for his question, and of course many people sometimes they do ask why it is that we have such demands on public sector funding, but the reality is, as we know, that it's not just that our public services are structured in such a way that it is costing more and that requires that fundamental transformation, but we do have those additional needs. We've got high levels of chronic illness, 50 plus, and that requires medical support and intervention. We've got higher levels of special educational needs, higher levels of mental health challenges that need to be addressed. So we do have those additional needs. We've got, and we're all very aware, a very high level of economic inactivity, and we need to support those people being able to get back into the workforce. But at the moment, they need that support as well. So there's additional pressures on our budget. That, of course, makes funding our public services here challenging, and that's why we need that additional support. But ultimately, we want to get to that sustainable, absolutely sustainable public finance situation.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. The Deputy First Minister will be aware of my work with the voluntary and community sector, especially last year when the sector faced a cliff edge with no united voice to challenge it. And in response, I was pleased to establish a new all-party group for the sector here in Stormont, where a primary concern raised is whether the government truly recognises the value of the sector. Can the Deputy First Minister outline how the draft programme for government will capture and acknowledge the value of the community and voluntary community sector here?
Minister.
I thank the member for her question, and to me it's not necessarily confined to a programme for government answer, in that I think at every stage and at every level within all of our departments we need to recognise the important role of our community and voluntary sector. Increasingly over the years, our community and voluntary sector actually rolls out core public services, and we need to recognise that and recognise how important that is and what an important and essential role that they do. And very often when budgets get tight, they are the first to be hit hard in terms of those reductions, not recognising the incredible value of their work. That does need to change. They need to be protected, and as I said earlier on, they do such a fantastic job. Our third sector, community sector here in Northern Ireland, in my view, is the best in the world. And I think when people come here and they see it, they are amazed about how incredible they are and what they're able to deliver and the connections that they have within the communities that they serve.
Mr. South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the UK Shared Prosperity funding is due to end in March 2025, with a huge number of organisations in the sector due to place staff on protective notice from December 2024 if no clarity is sought for them. Could the Deputy First Minister outline any steps already taken or planned to be taken from the Executive Office to secure this funding going forward?
Minister.
Member for a question. We've already made representations on this issue. We need the highest level of certainty we possibly can. We don't want to get to the stage where we are looking into that cliff edge again without that certainty either to quantum or what those projects, schemes will look like. But more than that, I believe that the Northern Ireland relevant departments and the sector here should be part of the process of developing whatever it is that replaces sort of the phase 2 of that shared prosperity fund, to ensure that it is fit for purpose for what it needs to do here. We also have the British Irish Council coming up in June, and therefore that also provides an opportunity at the highest possible level for us to make those representations to ensure that there is that support there in the next phase of the shared prosperity or whatever it is that will replace it.
Alan Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Deputy First Minister for assessment of the North West 200? And does she agree with me that it really is a world-class event that brings huge benefits to our shores?
Minister.
Thank the member for his question. I absolutely and wholeheartedly agree. I was up on Saturday. It was a fantastic day and a fantastic event to see so many volunteers working with those in the North West 200 to make this, as you said, not just a Northern Ireland event, but a world-class event. Absolutely fantastic. Thousands and thousands of families, of spectators enjoying it, world-class competitors as well. It really is a jewel in the crown of Northern Ireland. It's something we should be really proud of, and I will be pushing for the case to have that additional support and the right support for North West 200 and road racing and other type events that are really, really positive for Northern Ireland.
Mr. Robinson.
Very much value the comments of the Deputy First Minister here today, and I'm pleased that she will commit to this House that both her that she and her department, in conjunction with the Sports Minister, will certainly promote this event. Can I also ask the other major sporting event next year, the Royal Open at Portrush? Will you also give that the maximum opportunities available to that too?
Sir.
I thank the member for his question. Absolutely. I think for too long there has been a frustration with events like the golf events, like our road racing events and other sporting events, trying to secure the right funding and support from the right sources. That is something we need to crack in terms of the executive. These are events that shine a global spotlight on Northern Ireland and some of the most beautiful places that we have up on the North Coast and many, many others. This is something that we should be rightly proud of. It is something that we all should be promoting, and of course we need to offer that support, not just that funding support, but other support in other ways through our departments. And I know that our Communities Minister will be at the forefront of championing the golf, but also in terms of the North West 200, road racing and our other great sporting events.
David Hollyford.
Mr. Speaker, can the Deputy First Minister give us an update on how TBOC is using sport to help develop positive community relations throughout Northern Ireland?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question, and of course sport was one of the signature projects of the first TBOC. We're undergoing the review at the moment, but I have no doubt that sport will feature heavily as we move into the revised strategy. I've had the great privilege, as I know he has, and many people around this chamber have had, to go out and see some of those sporting activities that bring people together. It is absolutely right and proper that not only do we enjoy the sports, identity, culture expressions pertaining to ourselves, but that we can also enjoy those that other people here in Northern Ireland experience and enjoy and love as well. It's a core piece of it, and I've no doubt it will be moving forward as well.
Mr. Hollyford.
First Minister, for her response. You're really welcome that she visited St Paul's and Tricamogie, and that sends such a positive media message about breaking down divisions. Locally, St Pat's Gaelic Club in Lisburn do incredible work, also bringing community together. But unfortunately, until now, she hasn't supported or signed their support documentation for them to purchase their pitches from the MOD. Can the Deputy First Minister, as Deputy First Minister, now reassure the club of her support?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. He will be aware as a constituency issue. I've been working with the club as well and speaking with them, as have my constituency colleagues. It is an MOD site, so of course that is out with the devolved powers, but of course I'm happy to continue to have those conversations with the club.
Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Deputy First Minister what consideration the Executive is giving to making sure that all departments are properly prepared and resourced to provide the necessary advice to the Democratic Scrutiny Committee to undertake its role?
Sir.
I thank the member for his question. There's no particular interest in this matter. Yes, it is a new area of policy for the department. I know he will be acutely aware of that. I have been speaking to the officials within the Executive Office who will work to have that coordination role to ensure that the Democratic Scrutiny Committee has that support that they can get. But I know that this is a new area which will require some evolution, in terms of the expertise, ensuring that the right skills are there in order to support you in the work, because this is an incredibly important role to understand how these rules and regulations will impact here in Northern Ireland. So I have no doubt that these conversations will continue, and I'm happy to do so.
David Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Deputy First Minister may be aware that the committee in the last week or two has experienced some pushback from departments around issues that are technically reserved matters, but for which the expertise in this place and in Northern Ireland sit with their departments. I'm sure she would agree with me. It's in the interests of the executive as a whole to work with us to ensure we are monitoring and addressing any risk to Northern Ireland and its interests. Minister.
I thank the member for his question. Absolutely. This mechanism was put in place to ensure that there would not be automatic or new rules, regulations and laws impacting on the people of Northern Ireland without some type of scrutiny or say in relation to those rules. That is a core democratic principle, and therefore it is absolutely right and proper that all departments should be doing their best to support the Democratic Scrutiny Committee in their work, because that is in the interest of all people in Northern Ireland to make sure that those rules, regulations and laws that impact us are properly scrutinised and that the right advice is being given.
That brings to a conclusion the time for questions to the Deputy First Minister. We now move to questions for the Minister of